Watch this, watch this. See you later, baby. In today's video, I will guide you through a Deathblade PVP build in Lost Ark 2022. I will be covering the skills, the combos, the stat points, how crowd control works, and much more. If you're interested in other Lost Ark videos such as Deathblade PV or leveling build, then make sure you check out my channel. Before we get started with the skills and such, I think it's important to mention why it's mandatory to play with a super wide 29:9 res no matter your monitor aspect ratio in Lost Ark. So go to options and enable forced 21:9 and you will see way further to the side, and since the point of view is not the same angle for every player, this is really important. I recommend you to look this up since I will not be covering it in this video. I will most likely make a PvP guide later on though with stuff like that. And don't worry, you will get used to the 21:9 in like an hour or two, and 16:9 will look weird to you. So with that out of the way, I quickly want to cover the combat stats and how the crowd control and super armor works before we dive into the skills. So when it comes to the combat stats, it's pretty straightforward. We will put 1 point into crit just to give us the ability to crit. 249 points into domination for damage against crowd controlled targets, and the last 750 points into swiftness for skill cooldown, attack speed, and movement speed. And then it comes to crowd control and super armor. I'm gonna try to explain this really quick and briefly so you know what we're talking about later when it comes to the skills. So there are 3 different types of CC levels when it comes to Lost Ark PvP. First one being staggers, the second one being knockups, and the third one being hard CCs like stuns. If you take a look at your skills, you will see that certain skills do have certain super armors. So the first one being paralysis immunity that makes you immune to stagger. Second being push immunity that makes you immune to knockups. And the third one being debuff immunity, which makes you immune to hard CCs like stuns. So that's basically it in a really short version. So with that said, let's get into the skills. So starting off with Spincutter, a really simple skill that's mainly just used for mobility. We will put 4 points into this one for the attack speed. A quick tip though, if you want to look at how a skill works in PvP versus PvE, since some of them do work different, hold Alt while hovering over the skill. Next up is Dark Axel, which is a really good mobility skill. Perfect to close the gap to engage your combo or just to get some distance. We go on with Swift Fingers for the attack speed, Tenacity for the push immunity, and High Axel for the 4 meter extra distance. Then we have Surprise Attack, which is another mobility skill, but this one also leaves a sword with a knock-up effect. As you can see right now, the enemy is getting knocked back quite far away. But if you actually use this against a player close to a wall, it actually becomes insane, since the wall is basically holding them in one place, so they will get knocked up several times. So definitely keep that trick in mind because that's really good. We go wide attack angle for the bigger radius, excellent mobility for the extra 2 meter move distance, and finally trailing sword burst for that knock-up effect. So that's the main mobility skills, and of course you have your spacebar dash, which is insanely strong. And keep in mind it also does give you the debuff immunity when you dash. But let's move on to some crowd control abilities. So starting with upper slash. So it creates a tornado that knocks up the enemies, which is really good to set up combos with other skills. Here we go sturdy armor for the minus 40% damage taken. You could also use Swift Fingers, but the attack speed, as you know, makes the skill go faster, which means that the CC will be happening faster, but it will not last as long. So I prefer to not use that to keep the target CC'd longer, but that's definitely up to you. Then we use the large twister for the knock-up effect, and then tenacity for that push immunity. Next up is Headhunt, which is the only hard CC stun skill that we have as a Deathblade. We go quick prep for lower cooldown, quick hunt that makes it faster, and enhanced stun for a longer stun duration. Then we have Maelstrom, which is a buff that puts a tornado around you. This is the one ability that you could definitely swap out if you want to. I will go through after this one what skill would be a good one to swap to. But if I'm playing Maelstrom, I go Orb Control for the Death Orb meter gain, You could go Cold Touch, which freezes the enemies for 1 second if they attack you, then Dark Order for movement and attack speed, and Stabilized Energy for 5-second push immunity. So the way you use Maelstrom is to pop it right before you go into a fight, just to get that 5-second push immunity. You can still get hard CC though by a stun for example, but this will make it easier to get your combos off. I have been using this, but I'm thinking of swapping it to the next skill, which is Turning Slash. It's pretty good for mobility and to close the gap with the push immunity, meaning you can go through skills like the upper slash I went through before because of the knock-up immunity. I'm going excellent mobility that gives you longer distance, tenacity for the push immunity, and triple turn that makes it a triple spin attack. Then we have the main damage skill, which is Moonlight Sonic, a channeling AoE skill that is really good and easy to follow up your teammates with if they CC'd some enemies. I'm going Fist of Darkness for the damage, Sustain Enhancement that makes it a hold ability and increase the damage as well, and then lastly Shade Sonic for even more damage. Then we have Blitz Rush, which is a really good and flexible knock-up skill because of its range. It makes it really easy to follow up on your own, but especially on your teammates' CC plays. Here we are going Vital Point Strike for the crit. You could, however, go Wide Angle Attack for a bigger AoE radius, then All Around, which makes it a normal skill and not a charge up, and lastly Shadow Rush for that extra damage. Then lastly, we have Awakening skill. Here you want to use Flash Blink since it's way easier to use than the other Awakening skill and it provides great damage. But those are the main skills that I think are the best as of now for a Deathblade PvP build in Lost Ark 2022. With that covered though, let me show you some basics combos you can use when you PvP in Lost Ark as a Deathblade and getting started. Keep in mind though that a lot is gonna be situational, and when you start to learn more, it's gonna be really dependent on what your opponent does and what skill they have used and so on. So a really basic combo is to start off with Dark Axel to close the gap, then you use Upper Slash into a Headhunt, then Blitz Rush, and finally Moonlight Sonic for that fat damage. Another one is to use Headhunt instead of Upper Slash, and then Blitz Rush and Moonlight Sonic. Of course, you can start with any mobility skill to close the gap like Dark Axel, and sometimes you don't even need a mobility skill for it, so keep that in mind. You could also use your Awakening skill or Identity skill instead of Moonlight if available and you need that extra burst damage, and you can probably get in a Moonlight Sonic after those as well since they do stagger. But when it comes to PvP in Lost Ark, you just want to make sure that your target is crowd control before you try to go for big damage. Otherwise, they will just get out of it with your dash or something similar and you will just miss your skills and the damage will be really little because of it. So keep in mind, you gotta think of the CC first and then the damage. Kinda a little bit similar to World of Warcraft in that sense. Because I know a lot of people just want to do damage, but to do damage, you gotta get the CC in. But that's gonna be it when it comes to this Deathblade PvP guide for Lost Ark in 2022. I will have more Deathblade guides for PvE and PvP. I think my next PvE build for level 50 should be coming a few days after this one. And then of course, more Lost Ark videos are also on the way. So do make sure you subscribe for that so you don't miss that out. And I will catch you guys in the next video or live on my Twitch stream.